Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. It is Kate, Kelly and PozzA here as always, and this weekend we were in the Sachsenring for MotoGP racing, and we saw the Saxon King get dethroned. Before we do jump onto that racing, there is one bit of news that I want to cover before we get into the madness that was Moto3, Moto2 and MotoGP. The news is that motorsport.com is reporting that Fabio DiGiannantonio is staying at VR46 until 2026, so a 2-year contract covering 2025 and 2026. And they're also reporting that he will have a GP25 next year. I think this is great news. How about you guys?
I mean, I'm very happy over it. I didn't think of Fabio going anywhere else at the minute, and the fact that he's getting a GP25, I think, was inevitable after Marco Bezzecchi moved to Aprilia. I feel like it could have been a case of only one of them getting a GP25, which would have been very likely if Marco had stayed. Oh God, that was my score. If Marco had stayed, but now that he's moved on, Fabio is the one who has to step up. He gets a GP25, and I'm happy with that. I'd love to see some good performances out of him because he just hasn't had the look and the performances that we'd like to see from him. So I think this is great news, and I think he could actually really do something with this.
Yeah, I think it's a good deal for both parties. It felt like VR46 were really trying to keep him, and it seems like he obviously wanted to stay. And I feel like it'll be exciting to see what he can do on the current spec Ducati as opposed to the year-old one, because it seems like most of the rest of the GP23 riders, apart from pretty much just Marquez, have had at least some trouble adapting to the GP23. So it'd be nice to see how the one that's done probably the best at adapting can go on the full factory bike.
And on Kelly's point, there has been also that news that factory Ducati are looking to only run 3 factory bikes next year. So I think Alex Marquez is not someone who should be getting it. Furman, him coming up, I think he shouldn't be getting it too. So I do think that Fabio Di Giannantonio is the best pick for it. So yeah, all in all, a good choice all around, and Digi is really settling into that team, which is quite nice to see. Thinking about the racing now, bear with me for this, because we're going to start with Moto 3, and we're going to start with some penalties. Because there were 26 riders on the grid on Sunday lining up, and half of those, 50% of them, had a penalty. So Farioli, Batelli, Watley, and Esteban started the race from pit lane. Basauri, Caro, Rossi, Lanetta, and Zuratuza all had to complete a double long lap penalty. Yamanaka, Almanza, Ortola, and Nepa all had to complete a single long lap penalty. And Ogden, Suzuki, and Furasato all received warnings. All of these penalties came due to the riders being slow on the racing line. My question to the both of you, do you think these penalties are severe enough? Because we are clearly seeing so much slow riding in practice sessions and qualifying. And what more, if anything, do you think that can be done?
I think it's clear that the direction they've gone already with the penalties hasn't been working because we're still seeing repeat offenders. But I've been thinking about this a lot. There's so many different ways they can go about it to get rid of it, and it does just come down to penalizing it harshly to stop the riders from doing it. So I've thought like some combination of pit lane start and a double long lap or a back of the grid start and double long lap, just something that will completely ruin their weekend to sort of stop them from wanting to do it. Something like that could work.
Yeah, on that point, I would not be as, I suppose, educated as both of you would be on how the penalties work, but I would agree with Paz. I feel like if they give a harsh enough penalty, it's going to give them a mindset, oh my God, my weekend is ruined. I'm not doing that again. So, pit lane start and a long lap or a double long lap would probably be a good combination to give. And then it's going to be way less likely that they'll ever do it again, because now they're like probably just in the mindset, it's only a long lap, it'll be grand. Like, that's not good. So yeah, just completely agree with Paz.
And I think the combination of a pit lane and double long lap is definitely something to think about, because it was quite early on in the race that those that started at pit lane caught up and passed those who had double long lap penalties, which sort of did come across as those who had the double long lap penalties seemed to be worse off than those who had a pit lane start, which absolutely shouldn't be, I suppose, the way that the penalty system should work. It's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on, because it's, yeah, very dangerous, and we definitely don't like to see it. Looking at the podium, we saw Ivan Ortola in P3, Teo Furusato in P2, and David Alonso in P1. All three of them put in absolutely stunning performances. My favourite on the podium, though, probably has to be Furusato, purely because we saw him running through the gravel and still managed to pick up a podium. And he clearly wasn't happy with second place. He clearly wanted P1. His face was just like absolute thunder after the race. What did you guys think of the race?
I think it's self-explanatory what I thought of the race. I can't even speak. That's how sad I was. Funny part is, obviously, if you don't know, Colin Vire is my favorite rider, and he crashed 2 laps into the race. And the funny part is, which I believe Kate will put a photo of the screenshot behind, is where Pod said, I wonder if Colin Vire will make it past 2 laps this weekend. 5 seconds later, right underneath it, Vire's down. That explains my entire weekend, to be honest. I was so upset. I didn't want to speak to anyone. Yeah, he will come back stronger. The man will come back stronger. I hold faith. I hold so much faith. They're on the break now. The break will give him enough time to regenerate and be like, I need to get a win in my head. Enough yap about that. Apart from that, the race was actually quite good. I loved it. I enjoyed it. Really, really unfortunate though for Rueda, who had a really, really good run. He was up for podium spots and then he was just down. And Jacob Rolstone as well, who, by the way, had an awful little shunt with his bike, like in the areas that you should not have a shunt with the bike. Like, just as a genuine question, Jacob, are you all right? Like, do you need medical attention? That was not nice to look at. But yeah, then he went down, and it was so sad because he had such a good weekend going for him as well. Really, really nice points. And I want to give a mention to Scott Ogden, because that man had a really good weekend. I think, like, he came 10th overall compared to his last performances. He put in a good performance, and I'm happy with that. So if we take Colin Vire out of the equation, it was a good race.
Yeah, I think it was a good race in sort of different ways for all of the top three. Obviously, with Ortola coming back from his penalties, Furusato coming back from running through the gravel after nearly hitting David Munoz, and obviously Alonso leading pretty much the entire race without being passed or even challenged, really. So it was sort of impressive for all three of them. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to go over the rookies, just because I like to see how they're doing. Angel Picaras was top rookie in P5. Quite a gap back to the next rookie, which was Joel Esteban in P14. And the rest of them finished outside the points, with Zurituza in 16th, Carraro in 17th, Bouazri in 22nd, Detweiler in 23rd, and Linetta and Ralston not finishing.
And unfortunately for Ralston, that is his first race that he will be finishing outside of the points. The moment that Kelly mentioned earlier wasn't entirely his fault. It was a racing incident, and he collided with another rider that sent him up, and he came back down onto the tank, like Kelly said, and then, yeah, a few more bumps and bruises. It tried to kick him off, and it was probably the save of the century. I did check out his social medias afterwards, and he said that the bike was damaged, and that is part of the reason he crashed. And as PozzA has just pointed out to me in the podcast chat, technically he didn't finish, so he didn't finish outside of the points, so the record is in fact alive. Another race where rookies were really good and really strong, and I know PozzA will be talking about them some more, is Moto2. Our podium was Ayagura, Jake Dixon, and Furman Aldeguer. This race was quite sensational for me as a Furman Aldeguer fan. Straight after the race, we did see that his tyre pressure, though, was under investigation. And in Moto2, if you don't know, if you're found below the minimum tyre pressure, you do get disqualified. It's black and white. There's no in between like there is in MotoGP. Fortunately, no further action was taken, so that was a big relief for me. The only other riders I really want to just mention, real quick before I go to you guys, is Joe Roberts, who finished in P8 and only lost 1 championship point to Sergio Garcia, considering he's there with a broken collarbone that he got last weekend and still managed to put it there. It was just completely incredible. And also, I want to shout out to Tony Arbolino. I think his results didn't really show how well he did in this race. Yes, he cooked his tyres, but it was so good to see him battling at the front. What did you guys think of the race?
I loved it. Obviously, I think it's self-explanatory as a Furman Aldeguer fan, but uh, definitely I would have mentioned Tony as well. He genuinely had a good race before his tires got cooked. He was consistently at the front. He was leading for a bit. Like he was so on it, and I feel like he deserved the podium so much. But of course, I I'm really happy with Agura and Aldeguer on the podium. I'll admit, I was shocked by Dixon on the podium. I was not expecting it, and I think I underestimated him. I've underestimated him a lot in this series, so good for him. It's nice to see. Sergio Garcia, who I did have, I believe, in my podium in P3, finished P6. P7, sorry, which isn't bad, but I expected a little more. But there's not much I can do. And yeah, our DNFs, which unfortunately for Kate did involve Aaron Canna, the man just had a howler. He was not having a good weekend, and I think at that point it was probably best for for him to just like DNF and go because he was just having a howler and it would have been worse for his like probably mental health. So yeah, Mario Aki as well, who went down, and then Sonta van der Gorberg, who I want to mention. He has had a severe lack of results or even finishes of races. I don't know what's going on, but the man is having it just like a season long howler, and I know he's had some injuries. He's not feeling the best, but at the same time, he's just had a complete howler since the start of the season, and I really wanted some performances out of him, and it's awful to see. So just to shine a light in him because I feel like we don't really say enough about him.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good Moto2 race, just in general, seeing as Moto2's had a history of being sort of whoever leads away from lap one ends up winning the race. Glad it wasn't like that. But yeah, I'm just going to go over my rookies as always. Diogo Moreira put up his best result of the season and the best result for a rookie this season, beating Senna Agius, who finished fifth in Catalunya. There's quite a gap back to the next rookie, which was Senna Agius in P11. He was fighting for the podium, but in the end just looks like he cooked his tyres, along with Arbolino and Lopez, and Gonzalez to a degree. And the last rookie in the points was Jaume Massio in P15. Apart from that, Danny Munoz was in 19th. Javier Artigas was 23rd. Ayumu Sasaki was 24th. And on his Moto2 debut, Roberto Garcia crashed out after 11 laps. And Mario Agi crashed out as well.
It was definitely quite crash-filled, Moto2, compared to the other races. But overall, we did see quite a lot of clean racing this weekend. Moving on to MotoGP, we saw a sensational Grand Prix race. But before we get into that, I want to talk about just a few talking points. First off, Alicia Spargo withdrew from the Grand Prix weekend after just doing 3 laps. He wanted to focus on his recovery to be fully recovered from Silverstone. He did pick up some injuries and quite a big crash last weekend out in Assen, so unfortunately he wasn't running this weekend. Trackhouse, where do I start? That was an absolutely incredible weekend that did seem to come out of nowhere for them. Unfortunately, Raul Fernandez didn't really translate it into results, but they ended up P2 and P3 on the grid, which I thought was incredible. And our sprint podium was Pecco Bagnaia in P3, Miguel Oliveira in P2, and Jorge Martin in P1. And I just think it's a great result that Oliveira really needed, probably just to boost his mental health coming into, silly season if he wants to keep his seat. What did you guys think of the sprint?
I was okay with the sprint. I expected, not like I wanted it to happen, but I did actually expect a DNF to happen, but it didn't, and it's actually refreshing to see. I think having a race with no DNFs is definitely better than one with about 15. So that was really nice. It was a good race regardless. My little favorite sprint merchant, Jorge Martin, was on it. I was like, that's good for me. That's good for points. I'm happy. And then Pecco Bagnaia in P3 was okay. I wanted him to get P2, obviously, but I'll take a P3. It's all right. And then can we talk about Miguel Oliveira? Like where did that come from? Because it was so nice to see the track house was really on it this weekend. I loved their performances. I was watching them almost consistently, and I loved to see Oliveira get some form of result because he needed that. He needed something to boost him up, and I feel like that was perfect. However, I had a bad race watching experience, I believe we can say, in the format of Pedro Acosta, because what happened to that man? Why, why was he all the way down the bottom? He was behind Gardner and Bradle, and they're only there as a fill-in. Like, oh no, it was just not it. It was not it. But we get up, we move on, and he had a better race the next day, so I'm happy with that. And then my other two, which is Mark in P6 and Bezecchi in P10. Oh, Marco, man, I just can't wait till you get to Aprilia. That's all I'm gonna say. And then Mark in P6, what can you do? He had a bad quality.
Yeah, I didn't think it was an awful sprint. Some close battles throughout the field on a track which is quite difficult to overtake on. Apart from that, I don't really have much else to say. I probably need to start rewatching the sprints on Sunday or something, just because I have practically no memory of it nowadays. But yeah, some good battles up and down the field. Obviously, Marc Marquez coming through from 13th on the grid to 6th, making moves left, right, and center pretty much. Only 0.003 of a second between him and Vinales at the line, which is just crazy. You can get gaps that close. Yeah, nothing much else to say.
And I think not helping anyone's memory of the sprint was that Grand Prix because it was sensational. We saw some spectacular overtakes, some really aggressive maneuvers from a few riders. And, well, the second to last lap also happened, and we will get to that. But our podium was Alex Marquez, Marc Marquez, and Pecco Bagnaia in P1, and that definitely doesn't tell the story. But this podium was the first time that brothers have stepped on the podium since 1997, which I think is just quite nice and wholesome. And it's the first time we've seen Alex and Mark on the podium together in the Premier class, and I just absolutely loved it. It was just really wholesome scenes, even if it was, at the expense of Mark losing his crown at the Sachsenring and also Jorge Martin crashing out by himself on the second to last lap out of the lead. So that was pretty brutal. But overall, I just think it was a superb race. What about you guys?
Well, of course, I loved it. I'd like to say, I think the crash with Martin, I'd just like to say, he just can't handle the pressure when he's leading. I feel like once he realizes that everyone else is coming after him, it's like he panics and then boom, he's down. And it's unfortunate to see, of course, but I feel like it's like a canon event at this point now. Like nearly every time someone is chasing him for a win, Martin goes down on his own. It's literally just down to pressure, and it's just sad. I feel like it's something he really needs to work on because it's just upsetting. It's upsetting all of us now, even the non-Martin fans. It's just really sad to look at. But regardless of that, that gave Benyaya the win, who's been on it all weekend. I'd like to say he's been very speedy. So I'm happy with that. I love myself some Marco Bezzecchi points as well. So him finishing in P8 was great. Frankie Morbidelli, I'd like to give an honourable mention to because as much as I do not like this man, he did put up a good performance for a few laps before he screwed it and fell off. But well, not the bike, but just fell off as a person. But we'll forget about that. Just like to mention his 5 minutes of fame. Moving on from that, Pedro Acosta bounced back from an awful sprint and came seventh, so I'll take it. Sorry, Kate. Where in my head I can't think. Where did you pull them again? Oh, you pull in P1 after you berated us for not putting Marc Marquez as the winner. Who out of the three of us, who is the genuine winner this weekend to our predictions?
That would be
So
PozzA.
yeah, but at the same time, he considered Mark, didn't he? What did you do? You berated us, and then you said, I want to put Pedro Acosta as my winner. I want to talk about Luca Marini in the points. Yes, please. I was so happy. I have been waiting for this. Like, he outperformed Joan Mir, so people cannot say that he's worse than Mir because look at the performance he's put on all weekend. That man is in the points. So overall, good weekend for me.
So we're just going to ignore the fact that Mir has 13 points this season and Marini has 1.
Yeah, I'll ignore it because people have been absolutely crap talking Marini since he joined Honda, and they're forgetting that Mir has been on that death bike for multiple years, and Marini has been on it for a couple months. So let me be happy. Let me feel the happiness. All right, don't judge me for my choice of words.
Yeah, because I was just going to say we're going to forget the amount of Premier Class World Championships that Joan Mir has too as well.
Oh yeah, the one that he won with absolutely no wins. Yeah. Okay.
He got a win, didn't he?
He did win a race.
Yeah.
Oh, God forbid he won a race. Wow. Okay, right. I'm
How
just
many
being
races
mean.
is...
Move on. I'm just being mean at this point now.
Just one last question. How many races has Marini won in MotoGP?
That's irrelevant information. Shut up now. Silence. I mean, how many bloody Moto2 points does Dennis Onchu have? I don't see what your point is here. Like,
More than Marini.
So you're berating the man with a broken wrist. That's low, Kelly. I thought you were better than that.
I was on the bit before he broke his wrist, actually, but all right. I never bully Dennis Onchu intentionally because I'm sure he's a lovely man, and you are like a little fanboy. So I wouldn't do that to you because I'm nice like that.
And just for your information, Luca Marini has 1 World Championship point. Dennis Onchu has 6. So that sort of answers that question.
Ah, well, I think I need a nap.
The last thing to mention from MotoGP is the fact that Fabio DiGiannantonio had a slow puncture. This meant he had to retire from the race and he ended up without points this weekend. So that's our Sachsenring review. Do let us know if we missed anything or if you had any particularly strong reactions. We'll be here next week. Next week, we intend to do sort of like this mid-year summary of MotoGP, like we did for Moto3 and Moto2. So we will be bringing out content all through the summer break. But for now, have a great week.